The case of Clara Schwartz stands as a chilling testament to how the lines between fantasy and reality can blur, leading to unimaginable horror. It is a story where imagination became a weapon, wielded with cold precision. Clara orchestrated the brutal murder of her own father, Richard Schwartz. This wasn't a crime of passion in the traditional sense, but one born from deep-seated animosity and perceived grievances. The actual act of killing was carried out by another, Kyle Hulbert. He was a young man ensnared in Clara's web, manipulated into believing he was acting for a just cause. Kyle was convinced he was executing a righteous mission. He saw himself as a warrior, fulfilling a destiny crafted by Clara's narrative. This narrative, however, was a dangerous fabrication. It was a fantasy spun into a deadly reality. Please like and subscribe if you're new to the channel. Clara Schwartz experienced a profound loss 4 years before the murder. Her mother succumbed to cancer, leaving a void in the family. Her mother had been the emotional anchor, the one who held things together. Her absence created instability. Following her mother's death, Clara's relationship with her father deteriorated significantly. Animosity festered and grew. Born in 1981 in Leesburg, Virginia, Clara was the youngest of 3 children. She grew up in a seemingly ordinary suburban environment. Clara felt a unique connection with her mother. This bond meant her mother's death hit her particularly hard, contributing to a decline in her mental state. She was undeniably intelligent, possessing a sharp mind, yet she was also described as reserved, melancholic, and possessing a rebellious streak. Her outward appearance reflected an internal darkness. She adopted a Gothic style, gravitating towards heavy metal music and esoteric interests. Her fascinations included magic, role-playing games, and a disturbing interest in crime. These elements would later converge with deadly consequences. Clara made serious accusations against her father. She claimed he subjected her to physical and psychological abuse. She even alleged he attempted to poison her on multiple occasions. These claims painted a picture of a deeply dysfunctional and dangerous home life. Her father, Richard Schwartz, was a highly respected scientist. His work often took him away from home, perhaps creating distance within the family. However, Clara's siblings offered a starkly different perspective. They vehemently denied any history of violence or abuse within the family home. Their testimony suggested that the abuse Clara described existed primarily, if not solely, within her own mind. This highlights a potential disconnect from reality. The plan to murder her father was not conceived in a moment of rage. It was meticulously developed within the framework of a fantasy role-playing game. Clara invented this game herself, naming it Underworld. It became the blueprint for the real-world crime. Within the game's narrative, Clara assigned herself a powerful, malevolent role. She was Lord Chaos, or sometimes the Lady or Priestess of Chaos. Her father, Richard, was assigned a specific target role within this dark fantasy. He was simply referred to as the Old Guy. The core objective of the Underworld game, as played by Clara, revolved around one central task. It was about finding the most effective way for an assassin character to eliminate the Old Guy. Clara's research for the game took a disturbing turn. She began researching various poisons. Her initial preference was for her father's death to appear natural. This suggests a desire for control and to evade detection from the outset. The game wasn't just a harmless pastime. It was a testing ground, a rehearsal for murder. It allowed her to explore violent scenarios without immediate real-world consequences. This desensitization likely facilitated the eventual act. The lines between the game world and the real world were becoming dangerously blurred for Clara. The fantasy was bleeding into reality. This fusion of imagination and intent created a potent and lethal combination. The game provided the structure, the fantasy provided the motive, and the real world provided the victim. Clara didn't intend to carry out the physical act herself. She needed an agent, a pawn in her deadly game. Her first attempt to recruit an accomplice involved her boyfriend, Patrick House. She tried to draw him into the Underworld game and the murder plot. Attrick, however, recognized the dangerous nature of Clara's obsession. He saw her insistence on making the fantasy real as a red flag. He wisely chose to end the relationship. He removed himself from the path of the impending tragedy. Undeterred, Clara sought a more susceptible target. She found him in Kyle Hulbert. Kyle was a 19-year-old young man with significant mental health challenges. He suffered from schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, making him vulnerable to manipulation. Kyle became utterly captivated by Clara. He was drawn into her world and readily believed her fabricated story of abuse. He saw himself as her protector, a noble warrior destined to rescue her. He believed he was acting for justice. Kyle's perception of reality was already fragile due to his mental illness. Clara's manipulation further distorted his view. She fed his delusions, reinforcing his belief that killing Richard Schwartz was a necessary and heroic act. He became an extension of her will. His mental state made him the ideal target for Clara's plan. He was easily influenced and lacked the capacity to critically assess her narrative. Clara exploited his vulnerabilities ruthlessly. She molded him into the assassin character from her game. He was no longer just Kyle Hulbert. In his mind and in Clara's design, he was the instrument of chaos, the one who would eliminate the old guy. With Kyle under her influence, Clara proceeded with meticulous planning. She provided him with the necessary resources and instructions. She gave him $60. This seemingly small amount was crucial for executing the plan. The instructions were delivered via text messages. This method provided a layer of distance and deniability for Clara. Kyle used the money as directed. He purchased items intended to conceal his identity, like a hat and gloves. He also bought gas for the journey. The murder required travel to the Schwartz home. Clara ensured she had a solid alibi for the time of the murder. She made sure she was at James Madison University. This calculated move demonstrated her foresight and determination to avoid suspicion. She planned not just the murder, but her escape from accountability. On the night of December 8, 2001, Kyle was driven to the Schwartz residence. He was accompanied by two other individuals, Catherine Inglis and Michael Foale. These accomplices played a supporting role, facilitating Kyle's arrival at the scene. They were also drawn into Clara's orbit of influence. Kyle entered the house. He confronted Richard Schwartz, leading to an argument. The confrontation escalated rapidly. Kyle, armed with a sword, attacked Richard. The attack was brutal and relentless. Richard Schwartz was stabbed a staggering 45 times. The fantasy had fully invaded reality. The game's objective was complete, leaving behind a scene of horrific violence. The murder of Richard Schwartz was not a spontaneous act. It was the culmination of a disturbing psychological process. Clara's ability to construct an elaborate fantasy and then compel others to act within it is deeply unsettling. It speaks to a profound manipulative capability. Her alleged claims of abuse, denied by her siblings, highlight the potential role of delusion or distorted perception. This disconnect from reality is central to understanding her motive. The underworld game served as more than just a plan. It was a psychological tool, allowing Clara to externalize her dark desires and recruit others into her world. Kyle Hulbert's mental health issues made him tragically susceptible. He was unable to distinguish Clara's fantasy from objective truth. His belief that he was a hero fighting injustice was a direct result of Clara's manipulation. She exploited his vulnerabilities for her own ends. The roles of Catherine Inglis and Michael Foale also raise questions. Their involvement, even if limited to transportation, shows the spread of Clara's influence. The case forces us to confront the power of psychological manipulation. It demonstrates how a disturbed individual can bend others to their will with devastating results. It also serves as a stark warning about the potential dangers when fantasy worlds become indistinguishable from reality. For Clara, the game was not just played, it was lived, and others were forced to participate. The trial that followed brought these dark elements into the light. It explored the complex interplay of motive, manipulation, and mental state. Clara Schwartz was ultimately convicted of first-degree murder. She received a sentence of 48 years in prison. Kyle Hulbert was found not guilty by reason of insanity. He was committed to a psychiatric facility. Catherine Inglis and Michael Pfull received lesser sentences for their roles. They were convicted of accessory after the fact. The case leaves behind difficult questions. How much was Clara driven by genuine belief in her abuse claims, however unfounded? To what extent was her behavior a manifestation of psychopathology? Was she simply evil or profoundly disturbed? The ethical debate centers on responsibility. While Kyle committed the act, Clara was the architect, the one who set the deadly wheels in motion. The Clara Schwartz case remains a chilling study. It is a dark narrative of control, delusion, and the tragic consequences when the games people play turn deadly serious.